thirst for spectacle was quenched with blood. The Colosseum was a marvel of engineering, a testament to Roman ingenuity and power. It could hold over 50,000 people. A vast crowd drawn from every corner of the city, from the emperor in his gilded box to the poorest plebeian in the highest seats. They all came here for the ludi, the games. These events were a cornerstone of Roman life. But beneath the architectural genius, a darker purpose lay. The Colosseum was designed for one thing above all else: to host the most spectacular and the most violent entertainment ever conceived. Who were these men, the gladiators who fought and died upon the sand? Were they all slaves condemned to a life of violence? The reality is far more complex. Many were indeed slaves, captured in war or sold into this life against their will. They had no choice. Their bodies and their lives belonged to their masters. They were property, trained to perform in the arena. Their fate was not their own. It was decided by the crowd, the sponsor of the games, or the emperor himself. But not all gladiators were slaves. Some were criminals, men condemned by the Roman courts. Their punishment was to face the sword in the arena, damnati ad gladium, condemned to the sword. Then there were the volunteers, the octorati. These were free men, citizens who chose to become gladiators. Why would anyone make such a choice? For some, it was a way out of crushing debt. For others, it was the allure of fame, the promise of glory. Successful gladiators were the celebrities of their day. They were adored by the crowds. So, the gladiator was not one single type of person. Each man had his own story, his own reasons for being there. Beneath the bronze helmets and the fearsome armor were individuals, men with hopes, fears, and a powerful will to live. The life of a gladiator was one of relentless discipline. It all began in the ludus, the gladiator school. These were not just training grounds, they were prisons, surrounded by high walls with cells for sleeping and a central yard for practice. The men who entered these schools gave up their freedom. They were under the absolute control of the lanista, the owner of the school. The training was unimaginably harsh. It was a daily cycle of grueling physical exertion. The men would practice for hours on end, lifting weights to build strength, striking wooden posts, the palace, to perfect their technique. The instructors were often retired gladiators themselves, men who had survived the arena. They knew what it took to stay alive. They passed on their hard-won knowledge. Diet was also carefully controlled. Gladiators were not fed lean meats to create rippling muscles, as we might imagine. Archaeological evidence suggests their diet was largely vegetarian, high in carbohydrates like barley and beans. This diet was designed to create a layer of fat over their muscles. This fat served a purpose. It could protect them from superficial cuts in the arena. A shallow wound would bleed spectacularly, thrilling the crowd, but it would not necessarily damage a vital muscle or organ. Life in the ludus was a paradox. It was a place of extreme hardship and brutality, yet it also fostered a strange kind of community, a brotherhood. These men lived together, ate together, and trained together. They understood each other's fears. They shared a common fate. This bond, known as familia gladiatoria, was powerful. This shared experience forged them into something new. They were no longer just slaves or criminals, they were gladiators, a class apart. A day at the Colosseum was a carefully orchestrated event. It was a full day of entertainment for the Roman people. It began not with gladiators but with a grand procession. The Pompa, the sponsors of the games, the gladiators and musicians would parade into the arena. The crowd would roar its approval. The stage was set. The morning's events were often the Venationes, the wild beast hunts. Animals from across the empire were brought to Rome, lions from Africa, bears from Caledonia, crocodiles from the Nile. They were pitted against each other, or against armed hunters called bestiarii. It was a display of the empire's reach, a demonstration of Rome's power over the natural world. As midday approached, the tone shifted. The air grew heavy with a different kind of anticipation. This was the time for the meridiani, the midday executions. Condemned criminals were brought into the arena. Their deaths were turned into a public spectacle. Some were crucified, others were burned alive, some were forced to reenact gruesome myths, dying in the role of a tragic hero, and some were simply thrown to the wild beasts left over from the morning hunts. This was the most brutal part of the day. Then came the main event, the moment everyone had been waiting for, the gladiatorial contests. The fighters would enter the arena. They would salute the emperor's box with the famous, and perhaps misquoted phrase. The pairings were carefully considered. Different fighting styles were matched against each other. The nimble Retiarius with his net and trident, against the heavily armed Secutor. The Murmillo with his fish-crested helmet, against the Thracian with his curved sword. Each contest was a tactical battle, a dance of skill, strength and strategy. It was not just mindless hacking, it was a martial art, performed on the grandest stage. The crowd was not a passive observer, it was an active participant. They cheered for their favorites. They booed the hesitant fighter. They screamed advice from the stands. The noise must have been deafening. One of the most enduring images of the Colosseum is that of an emperor, seated in his box giving a stern thumbs-down gesture, a signal for death. This single image has been immortalized in paintings and films. It has come to define the final brutal moment of a gladiator's life. But this popular belief is likely a misunderstanding, a myth. The historical evidence is ambiguous. No single source clearly describes a thumbs-down gesture meaning death. The Latin phrase used, pollis verso, simply means with a turned thumb. But which way was it turned? And what did it signify? The truth is likely more subtle. Many historians now believe that the signal for death was not a thumb pointing down. It may have been a thumb pointed up, like a drawn sword, a clear, unambiguous sign to deliver the final blow. Another pervasive myth is that every gladiatorial contest ended in death, that the arena was simply a place of execution. This is an exaggeration. While death was a constant possibility, it was not the inevitable outcome of every fight. Gladiators were a valuable asset. They were expensive to acquire, train, and maintain. A lanista did not want to lose his investment after a single fight. A skilled gladiator could fight for years, winning many contests. Why did the Colosseum and its games matter so much to Rome? To us, it seems like a culture of institutionalized cruelty. But for the Romans, it served a vital social and political purpose. The games were a form of bread and circuses, panem et circenses. This famous phrase from the poet Juvenal describes a simple political formula: keep the population fed and keep them entertained, and they will be less likely to cause trouble. The games were a powerful tool for social control. The games were also a reflection of Roman values. Rome was an empire built on military conquest. The virtues it prized most were courage, discipline, and the ability to face death without fear. The gladiator, even if he was a slave, embodied these virtues. In the arena, he displayed the kind of martial skill and bravery that Romans admired. He confronted his own mortality with a stoicism that was seen as noble. The crowd was not just watching a blood sport, they were watching a demonstration of the very qualities that had made Rome great. Furthermore, the Colosseum was a microcosm of the Roman world. The seating arrangement was a map of the social hierarchy. The emperor and the senators had the best seats down at the front. The wealthy equestrian class sat above them. Then came the ordinary citizens, the plebeians, and at the very top in the worst seats were the women, the poor, and the slaves. Everyone had their place. The arena itself was a symbol of the empire's power. It showed Rome's dominion over people, from the captured warriors forced to fight, and over nature, from the exotic beasts hunted and killed. Ultimately, the games provided a shared cultural experience. They were a source of excitement, conversation, and identity for the people of Rome. Just as people today follow sports teams, the Romans followed their favorite gladiators. They had factions like the Blues and the Greens in the chariot races, which inspired fierce loyalty. The games were a release valve for society, a place where the violence and aggression that lay beneath the surface of any great city could be channeled and contained. They were a brutal, bloody, and deeply problematic institution, but they were also, for a time, the very heartbeat of the Roman Empire. The Colosseum stands today as a ruin, a magnificent skeleton of what it once was. The shouts of the crowd have long since faded. The sand of the arena floor is gone, revealing the labyrinthine passages below. Yet, it remains one of the most visited monuments on Earth. It continues to exert a powerful pull on our imagination. Why? Because it speaks to something deep within us. It is a stark reminder of the heights of human achievement and the depths of human cruelty. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable complexities of the past, and perhaps of ourselves. It is a place of pilgrimage for anyone seeking to understand the story of civilization. The legacy of the gladiator has also endured. It has been transformed and romanticized over the centuries. The gladiator has become a symbol of the ultimate underdog. The Colosseum also serves as a mirror. It reflects our own society's relationship with entertainment and violence. We may no longer watch men fight to the death, but our appetite for spectacle has not disappeared. We watch contact sports where athletes risk serious injury for our amusement. We consume violent films and news reports from the comfort of our homes. The technology has changed, but the fundamental human impulse to watch, to be thrilled by conflict, remains. The Colosseum asks us a difficult question. Have we really changed that much? And so the stones of this great amphitheater continue to speak. They tell a story of an empire's power, a story of the thousands of lives that were lived and lost within its walls. It is not a simple story of good versus evil. It is a story of a